Hi and welcome to Leading Maybe Gems. This day we are going to talk about how to transform angry attitudes into assertive behaviours. So we have positive attitudes, learning attitudes, attitude of appreciation, negative attitude, wrong attitude, aggressive attitude, angry attitude, all the attitudes. So the first thing I want to do is actually look at the word attitude. What does it really mean? So when someone says someone has a specific attitude, it's simply that they're implying there's a consistent pattern of behaviour, emotions, beliefs that are there towards a particular subject, maybe a situation or an individual person. And these attitudes can be positive, they can be negative, they can be neutral, but they influence that individual's preconception of how they interact with the world around them. So saying that someone has a certain attitude is actually implying a recognisable stance that they've got, an approach to their life and their circumstances. So that's attitude. We then throw on whether, as I mentioned, there's a negative or a neutral or a positive to it. Now let's look at the specifics of what we want to talk about today, and that is an angry or aggressive attitude versus an assertive. So how do we get from angry and aggressive to assertive? And not only that, but what is an assertive attitude? What's the difference between being angry and aggressive versus being assertive? Especially that aggressive versus assertive. Some people sort of go, well, aren't they the same? Right? But they're not, they're quite different. So I have been accused in my life of having an aggressive attitude on a number of occasions. And some of those occasions, that was absolutely right, I was. Because sometimes I was angry and frustrated about a certain situation or circumstance I was in, and instead of controlling those emotions, I allowed them to spill over in raised voices and talking over people, not allowing them to speak, trying to control and manipulate the whole conversation, and not listening to anyone else, because that was how I was being treated. So I joined the bandwagon, as they say. So when we have certain attitudes, particularly when it's aggressive, it does tend to be raised voices. In the Leading Me ladder of leadership, I talk about that's really when we are bigging it up. That's when I am trying to control what is happening here and I'm fighting to control it. It's not the best place to be. In fact, it's a shitty place to be. It causes others to join you right there in bigging it up. So you end up with basically two egos battling it out for control. Or you sometimes get people moving to this side and belittling. Remember, in the Leading Me ladder of leadership, that middle part, that in between, is leading me. It's the easy part. But as soon as we move to bigging it up on one side or belittling on the other, we have lost it, really. No one's winning at that point. But as soon as we get into that middle ground of leading me, that balanced attitude and being responsible, response-able, right? I often talk about being response-able because I'm out of the movie. I've talked about this on many occasions before, where you're in the movie theatre and you're in the movie, you're watching everything and you're reacting to frightening things and oh my God, that's so sad and oh, that's so funny. I'm reacting constantly because I'm in the movie. But when we come out, like you hear a crisp packet or a rustling of a packet and you come out and all of a sudden you realise that there's people who've come into the theatre, you never even noticed them. You were so in the movie, you never even noticed someone being there. And all of a sudden I'm out, I can see them, but I can still watch the movie. I can still see what's happening in the movie, but I'm not reacting to everything in that movie. Okay. And often what happens when we are being aggressive, the aggressive part really is that bigging it up side of things. And sometimes you'll also get people belittling instead of being in that middle ground. So they are not out of the movie, they're actually in the movie. So you've got to then think to yourself, okay, if they're in the movie, and people sometimes think that those who go quiet are, well, I've won the battle. But in actual fact, sometimes they're passive aggressive. So what they do is they go away and speak behind your back. And you've probably done this too. You go away and speak behind their back. You maybe not have said anything in the room at that time. Maybe you felt, I don't feel good in this, so I'm not going to raise my voice. I'm not going to say anything. So you're not joining them in the bigging, but you are going to that other side of belittling. Okay, so remember, that middle section is leading me. That's ease, flow. That's complete and utter. I'd say that's the feeling of real depth of love, joy, and particularly often I have people say, Max, how did you get me to the place where I was really confident? Your confidence comes from when you're leading me. Your confidence doesn't come out when your ego is ruling you at the other side of the ladder, whether it's bigging it up or belittling. It's like it doesn't make any odds. The fact that when we are at that belittling side, it's still the ego ruling me. When I'm at that bigging it, the ego is mastering me at that point in time. It's only when I come into the middle and out of that movie, I become the leader of the ego, right? So when we're in situations like this, and I have been, and I've joined somebody, and instead of me being in that middle, I've jumped to bigging it. So yeah, they accused me of being aggressive, and they were right. I was being aggressive. But don't forget, you can also be passive aggressive when you are in that belittling part of the leading me ladder of leadership. Okay? So, no one wins. No one wins when we are basically, the mental health issues are all out here. You may think you've won, but you haven't. The thing is that little fix that we get, that probably the dopamine fix that you've just had because I feel as if I put them in their place and I said, and they had nowhere to go with that because I'm bigging it up. Aren't I so clever? Well, no, you're not. Because that only lasts for a small time, and then the stories go, and the ego then really takes you and builds the stories of what they're like and what they've done. So you're moving from that bigging it up, you're bigging it up, and then you move down to victim and blame. Remember, we live in the situation that we have in this earth where we've got poles. We have poles within us, masculine, feminine, the north and south pole. We live in balance. This is what it is. But most of the time we're living out of balance. So if we're one side, we need to be the other. If we're in that middle section, we don't need to cross over to anything else. So it's being aware of where I am at that time. Instead of just someone fires up at me, I fire back. That's just ego. However, I have also been accused of being aggressive, and I haven't actually been aggressive, I've been assertive. And the difference is when I'm assertive, I'm in here, I'm in leading me, I'm in here, I'm in this middle section, okay? And that middle section that runs through me makes me calm, makes me centered, allows me to speak in lower tones. I'm respectful of others and listen to what others have to say. That is being assertive. Being aggressive, however, and this is what was coming back at me, Mags, you're just being aggressive about that. I had to pull them because that's just gaslighting, guys. That is just somebody who, my centre ground is pushing their ego's buttons. Okay? I don't know why. I don't need to know why. But I know that their ego is now out of balance. So now I have to just throw vitriol at you. So the easiest thing for me to do is throw at you, you're being aggressive. Because that's how I am. That's my reflection on you that I'm trying to push onto you. And that was what was happening. But by holding my ground, and leading me terms is the confidence of being able to hold your ground. It's not that you just lie down and let everybody roll over you, but it is that quiet, calm, centered, low tones, easy to talk to, but also listening to what they have to say. And then bringing to their attention the difference between where they are and where you are. Where they are is they are bigging it up. Where you are is your centre ground. And you can see by how angry they are getting, and you can call that behaviour out at that point. So whether it's gaslighting and somebody saying you are some way that you're not, or in the case of passive aggressive, and you can get passive aggressive bullies, but normally the bullying, we feel the control, the people who are they're trying to control the conversation, etc. We can then drop down into that, poor me, I can't believe it, they're bullying me, blah, blah. That's victim talk and feel. If we are there, we then go away and we are passive aggressive because we're now talking about them. But we're now being bullying towards them. It's just in words. So it's all the same thing. We keep reflecting everybody else's behaviour. So why not actually pull yourself into that middle ground and start your own leading me behaviour, which is I actually feel confident in that. So let's think about 3 things. Who is affected by angry, aggressive attitude? Also, where does an angry, aggressive attitude come from? And how do we change behaviours in ourselves? Okay, that's the 3 things that I want to talk about today. So, who is affected by anger and aggressive attitudes? Well, you're not going to like this, but we all are. The answer is every single one of us at some point in our lives have been angry and aggressive. Okay, so it's the attitude expressed by bigging it up, right? Or the belittling side where we're still not able to harness that emotion into something really positive for ourselves. So what we've done is we've just sped it out. So that then comes to the question of, well, where does it come from? Where does an angry, aggressive attitude come from? Where does any attitude come from? Well, the simple answer to that is the stories we tell ourselves. And that can come from the past. But it really is the unbalanced ego. I'm getting aggressive and angry towards you because you've hit a button of mine. You know, they don't know what the button is, but it may have been something in their younger age, or it may have been something somebody done last week that you didn't like and you never handled it very well. So now somebody's done it again and now you're really angry. Okay, so it basically comes from within, and the fact that we're not aware of where it's coming from and what it's all about, and we haven't done anything about that because we're not aware. And there's lots of things we can do, lots of tools we can use to actually get rid of that anger over whatever it is that we had the issue with. There's lots of tools out there. I mean, I have some tools, but there's plenty, right, that can help you with an angry attitude. So it is the ego that just wants to keep your mind in your stories. The ego never wants you to be in the present moment. Right? And you might think because you're blah, 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 or in your own self not saying anything that you're in the present moment. Oh, no, you're not. Because you're in the stories. You're feeding out. You're not listening to anything anyone's saying. Or you're just sitting there. But unfortunately, you're also not listening. You're in the belittling side as that inner critic feeding you all sorts of stories about how bad it is for you and blaming them and, you know, how they make me frightened and all victim talk. And that means that you are not squarely in that present moment of leading me. And leading me is very much being in the present. So if the ego doesn't like you being in the present, it will pull you to one side or the other. And if you go to one side, you'll end up on the other side. So either bigging it up or belittling, but either way, you're going to end up on the other side. And you'll belittle yourself, you'll belittle others, you'll big it up in front of others, but you'll also big it up to yourself. That is exhausting. That is mental health at its utmost. But as soon as you come into the present, as soon as you come into that centre ground, that's when it all changes. So how can we change that behaviour? Well, firstly, you must want to change it. So you have to really ask yourself the question. And I'd like you to just think about this question for yourself. Even if you want to pause this, just think, does my attitude towards whatever serve me well? If the answer's no, it means that you're lining up for a negative attitude or an angry attitude or an aggressive attitude or sad attitude or a down attitude, right? You're in the negative sense. And sometimes it's quite difficult to pull us out of that. And I know I've had experience of it, hence the reason I've built tools to keep me away from that side. So we have to ask ourselves, does my attitude serve me well? My attitude comes from my beliefs. It comes from my emotions. So I have to look at me first. This is what leading me is all about, okay? So does it serve me well? When it's a negative attitude, it never serves me well. I've never come across anyone. Don't get me wrong, we may have that dopamine hit for a couple of minutes because we feel so good because we put them in their place. Or I'm quiet, but inside my head, I'm calling them all sorts of names. I'm getting some chemical hits at that point. Problem is, they're short-lived and go. So they don't give me what I need. So you have to make me feel better, shouting at someone doesn't. Maybe instantaneously, but it really doesn't. And it's counterproductive and exhausting in all of our relationships. And if I'm doing it one place, if I'm doing it in the workplace, I'm doing it at home. If I'm doing it at home, I'm doing it in the workplace. Because it's my state of mind, my state of being. It is how I am perceiving and visioning what is to come. I'm in the future or I'm in the past. I'm not in the centre ground of present. So it will manifest itself in mental illness. There is no doubt. It's why we have an epidemic at the moment of mental illness. People are not aware of what their ego's doing and they don't know how to get that back in. I know, I suffered it at one point in my life, but I now don't. I now don't put up with it and I want to master my ego. So we can choose to stay in that behaviour or we can choose to use tools, techniques to help us out of that. I have tools, when I talk about the leading me ladder of leadership, when I'm in bigging it mode, I go straight to the 3 keys to eliminate your shite to get me back into the middle ground. If I'm belittling, I'll go to the 4 hours release model and I'll pull myself back into that middle ground of leading me away from mental health issues. Okay, because that's all these are. I want away from it as quick as possible. But there's other tools out there. There's free tools. There's breathing. If you've never done any breathing techniques, they're wonderful to be able to bring you back in at that middle ground. There is an app that I often recommend to clients, and it's just called Breathing App. I don't get paid for this, really, but it's called Breathing App. Great little app that helps you breathe diaphragmatically, okay, because it's a little ball that grows and then goes back down. That's a wonderful little tool to help you breathe better because most people that is breathe from the chest up and we're not helping our autonomic system. So breathing is one thing. Meditation. If you've never done any meditation, it is fabulous. I once used to say I couldn't meditate, didn't want to meditate because I thought I had to do it perfectly. And everything had to be perfect of what I was doing and what everyone else was doing at one point. I am the perfect me, but there is no such thing as perfection of anything other than looking out and seeing nature and how perfect nature is. But nature is the perfect nature. I am the perfect me, but nature accepts itself as that. We tend to allow the ego to master that part. So the other one is somatic yoga, and it's a slow yoga. It's actually about releasing energy that's trapped in your body, but releasing some emotions that are trapped there. The 3 keys to eliminate your shite is an emotional let out as well. But this is a yoga, this is a type of exercise that will do this too. Wonderful. Go and look them on YouTube. You'll get all of these sort of things on YouTube, whatever. They're different breathing techniques. Try different ones. But that is a way for you to control your behaviour and come back into the centre of leading me. Okay, there is nothing better and nothing feels as good as coming into that centre ground. It's why I've developed tools to help people to get back in there, because I once was, well, it's not that I once got myself into a situation where I was so depressed, it was really bad. And now, don't get me wrong, my ego still pulls me from side to side at times, but I've got tools to get me back in that middle ground. Okay, so find yourself the tools that will get you there. So 3 takeaways from today. Not anyone, but everyone has an aggressive attitude. At some point in their life, they have been aggressive. It could be passive aggressive, but they've been aggressive. But just because we have it doesn't mean to say we need to keep it. It's our ego mastering us, okay? Secondly, an aggressive attitude is not serving you well. Ask yourself, is my attitude at this point serving me well? If it's yes, great. If it's not, then move away from it. Just it's not worth being there. If it's putting you into that negativity, then move away, right? And use some of these tools and techniques that I've talked about. So become aware, right, of where you are on that ladder of leadership, that leading me ladder of leadership. Am I in the middle ground, out of the movie, observing, being able to choose what I want to do? Or am I actually bigging it up or belittling either myself or others? Okay, I can then choose where I want to go in that ladder. But I first of all need to acknowledge where I am. I need to become aware. Basically, without awareness, nothing changes. Okay? Understand that I get to choose what my attitude is. It's not that, as the ego likes to have, the ego manages that. If you allow it to, it will. But actually, if I take control back of that, I can manage that. And the third thing that I'd leave you with is understand, if I am in the movie, I am emotionally reacting to someone bigging it or belittling. And I'll do that. I'll big someone up. I'll big myself up. I'll belittle someone. I'll belittle myself. Right? I'm in the movie. That's all emotions that I am just reacting to. So I need to get back to centre ground of leading me by getting out of the movie, by observing and seeing what are my reactions and what new reactions do I want that will serve me well. And then it's changing that. And you may not change that when you're in it, because sometimes we get in the movie, but once we're in it, if we're aware we're in it, let's get ourselves back out, okay? Understand where you are on the leading me ladder of leadership, and you can move in and out of that movie as much as you want. There is times I want to be in the movie because I want to be absolutely belly laughing over all sorts. I just don't want to be stuck in a movie that is boring, miserable, and awful for me. So it's entirely up to you what you want to choose from that. If you like what you hear and you want a bit more of what we have, you can always find what we have on our blog. So the blog's there. You can choose which way you want to listen, read, or watch this content. And if you love it, then please, go and subscribe, and that way you're always there with it. Okay? And let's enjoy together. Let's have a good time and show the love. So you take care. And as I always say, stay true, stay you, and keep bringing out your brilliance. Bye for now.